Hey, welcome everyone to another session of Ask Me Anything. Now, today's topic is very interesting to all the parents. We are going to talk about MoneySense for your child. Now, at this moment, I just want to highlight, no, it is not about your children learning money habits, but rather it is for you parents, all right, to learn about how to guide your children in terms of their financial education. All right. Now, this session is for parents, and my name is Vicky, and I will be your host for today. Now, we have lined up a very interesting program for you, including some exciting live Q&A, Ask Me Anything segment later on. So stay with us to the end. All right. Now, at this moment, let me just introduce to you Institute for Financial Literacy. It is a collaboration between MoneySense, the National Financial Education Program, and of course, Singapore Polytechnic. Okay. Now, IFL provides free and unbiased financial education programs for members of the general public. So if you're interested, do check out our website, ifl.org.sg, to find out more. All right, so a very quick disclaimer. Now, this webinar, right, is the aim is to help you to evaluate information, and they do not provide any financial advice. So everyone's circumstances are different. So do your due diligence or speak with a professional counselor or licensed financial advisors before making your decisions. All right, now just to take notes, we are, participants are reminded that there is strictly no solicitation. All right, they should not try to encourage or solicit or proposition any business, services, or advisors. Now, IFL does not endorse, nor will we be held liable should any participants decide to engage on the services. All right, okay. Now, today's section, as I say, is about MoneySense for your child. Generally, I believe that as parents, right, we are actually very concerned about our children's well-being. It can be, in all aspects beyond just the formal education. And a lot of us probably will be wondering, how do we impart financial literacy, but also at what age should we start financial literacy? All right, so Warren Buffett once said, parents wait till their kids are in their teens before talking about managing money, but they should start as early as preschool. So for today's section, we will be touching on some of the proposed activities that parents can actually engage with their children. All right, so let's start the today's section with a poll. Probably just a very quick one on everyone's thoughts. All right, so why do you think it is important to teach financial education program for your children? All right, so we have three options: to improve their lives as it is a life skill, to go from surviving to thriving, all right, or the last, to enable them to meet their financial goals. So out of ABC, right, which one is the most important to you as a parent to teach financial education? Now, I spoke to some of my fellow parents friends. So they have actually spoke to me about their growing up experiences with money. All right, so they have realized that in this as they grow up, and of course as a parent right now, they realize that they are not so much, they are not taught in terms of financial literacy. All right, and they do have a love-hate relationship when it comes to managing their finances. All right, so that's why at this moment it is important for us to think about what is important to you when you teach financial education program. All right, so we have just ended the poll. So what we have is 50%, well, that is a lot, they actually chose A, to improve their lives as it is a life skill, and then B and C are 25% each. All right, I guess at this moment, right, as a parent, I would say yes, financial education program has actually been seen as something that is a lifelong skill. Once you get it, you can actually apply for the rest of your life. All right. Okay, so let me just move on. Okay, so sorry. All right. Okay. Now, when we talk about habits, all right, when I talk about habits, right, studies have actually shown that for all of us, or for majority of us, habits actually takes roots by the age of 9. All right. What it means is that we will need, it will be very important for us to guide the children and help them to develop good habits before they reach the 9 years old. And it will be easier for them, all right? It will be easier for them to form the good financial habits. If we try to do so after 9 years old, we might find that we need to take a little bit more effort to help them to break the bad habits. All right. Now, so that is a reason why, although a lot of parents feel that the children are too young to know about money, we always highlight to them that it is not true. All right, it is not true. Even though parents always think that children have a lot of opportunities to learn about financial literacy when they grow older. Right. So do take note on that. So when they learn financial literacy at an early age, we will realize that the children actually become less impressionable to the attitudes of money held by the adults or even friends around them. All right. So you will realize that they will actually have less pressure to actually match whatever their friends are spending on. So there is the lack of fear of missing out by the time they actually if they are much more well-tuned to the money habits. All right. So let's move on. Let's talk about some of the age-appropriate activities that we can actually play with our children at the younger age. All right. Now, for preschool children, at the age of 3 to 6, we can actually talk to them about calculating the right money habits. Now, IFL itself, right, has a complimentary workshop, MoneySense for your child, which actually teaches the participants, or also what we call the parents, in terms of how to introduce this important concept for the children as well. All right, so we will share more on this at the end of the hour, and you can actually sign up too if you're interested. Now, for preschool children at the 3 to 6, right, they are not so much into monetary, they are not so much into cash, physical cash. So at this age, it is important for us to inculcate in them what is the needs versus a want. So what parents can do is they can actually use the daily household example or items to teach your child to differentiate between a needs and the want. So for example, I'm sure a lot of children will tell you, I love to eat ice cream. All right, I love to eat that chocolate cakes that you have in the fridge. But you can actually highlight to them that, all this ice cream or these cakes that you're interested in, they're actually what we call a want. You should actually postpone all this to a later time. And at this moment, you should eat your dinner now, which is an essential need to help them to grow bigger, okay, grow bigger, taller as well. Now, these are all the teachable moments that you can actually guide with the child as well. Now, when it comes to, after talking about needs and wants, when they're slightly older, you can actually talk about savings. We do know that sometimes we do give them some money, or even, for the grandparents to give them some allowances. So we can try to help them to learn about savings. We can make it fun. That includes designing their own money box, and of course, saving their treats for, later on to prolong their enjoyment. We can also, in the process, right, in the form of savings, we can actually break the piggy bank, all right, when they have actually reached a certain level. So that means if you say, okay, I'm going to reach at this, save up to this level. So once they reach, you can actually break the piggy bank with them as a ritual. All right. And then after that, you can use the money to put it into the bank. Okay, go to the bank with them, or you can also use a portion of it to buy things that they like. Now, what about those who are in the primary school, 7 to 12? Now, at this age, right, they are mature enough to know that a little sacrifice today actually goes a long way tomorrow. So what we can do with them is we can actually play the marshmallow experiment to show them how to do delayed gratifications. So it is important for you at this moment to talk about opportunity cost. So if they're going to spend on certain things, what will happen if they actually choose to delay it? All right, what are the things that they can actually purchase if they have hold back their gratifications? At this moment, because they are getting a daily allowances, it is also important for you to talk to them about saving before you're spending. Now, what you can do is you can also get them to save a portion of their allowances before they go to school on a daily basis. On top of that, it is important for you to introduce the idea of budgeting. This is where you talk to them about, your allowances versus specific spending money, like your ad hoc money during your Chinese New Year, angbao money, or even for your birthday money that you receive from the grandparents. Now, as they move older and older, right, as they move on to the secondary school, then it is important for us to go one step further to teach them how to be a savvy consumer in today's digital age. teach them how to be a smart consumer, teach them how to compare prices, and of course, doing the alternatives for the particular goods or whatsoever that they're interested in by doing research. Now, this is also the time whereby you can also teach them. Sometimes those promotion prices might not be the final cost. So there might be some hidden costs that the merchants did not upfront tell the consumer. So teach them how to recognize them. Now, on top of that, you can also talk about different payment methods, be it the ATM, credit cards, or whatsoever. So this is to guide them and to be familiar with all the methods that are available to them. Now, this is also a good time to talk to them about investing and insurance. So you can actually bring in the ideas of investing, explain to them how investing or buying of shares and etc. will have a role in their portfolio. You can also help them to invest some of their savings and of course, show them how it actually generates more returns for them. As a teenagers, or rather I would say for most of us, we might actually come across some of the scams. It's so common nowadays. So talk to them about the scams, talk to them about the dangers on the internet. Now, children can be traumatized and they can feel very guilty and they might be unwilling to share the dilemma or whatever that they have faced with parents. So talk to them early. All right, discuss openly without judgment using some of those newspaper articles that has been reported to help them to understand more about it. All right, so at this moment, I would like to bring in my moderator for today. Hi, Sui Chu. Hi, Sui Chu.
Hi, Vicky. Thank you.
Hello.
Thank you for including me. My name is Sui Chu. I'm a co-worker with Vicky, and I will be the moderator tonight. There's already been quite a few questions that have been keyed into Slido over the last couple of weeks, and we certainly will answer those questions. But we do encourage live questions as well. Some of you who are participating, please scan this QR code and get into Slido. You can key in your questions. Or if you like, you can actually type a comment on Facebook. My colleague in the back end would make sure that that question is put on Slido. Now, before we go to Slido for the Q&A section, Vicky, is it okay if I ask you a couple of questions to get things rolling?
Sure.
Yeah. I really like your example of breaking the piggy bank. You know, I remember when I was a kid saving up, every once in a while I'll go into the room and try to look inside the piggy bank from the slit and shake a little bit. Maybe a few coins might drop out. I wish, you know, back then my parents had told me the importance of saving and deferred gratification. Vicky, some people say that attitudes are caught and not taught. So children observe us parents and learn from us. Are we then guilty of exhibiting poor behaviors or habits that our children see and emulate?
All right. Now, okay, as a mother of two, right, I have to admit, as a mother, as a parent, right, we have actually tried our best to instill the correct attitudes in our children. So whether be it in terms of being respectful to the elders, being very, how we manage your finances and etc. Now, we can teach our children everything that is correct. But at the end of the day, right, I noticed that the children actually follow what we have accepted during our day-to-day interaction instead. All right. So sad to say, I'm actually guilty of what you have just mentioned. So I have actually seen my children behaving the same way that I behave in some of the situations. Despite that, I have explained to them that, you cannot behave that way. You have to behave a certain attitude. So that is when I actually take a step back. And then I realized that, hey, you know what? Those are the occasions where I will behave that way as well. All right. So I see it as a teaching moment, not for them, also for myself, whereby I will also try to be a little bit conscious of my actions when I'm with them. All right. So I do believe that attitudes are really caught, not taught.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I suppose the children may also see this as a real life moment. I mean, daddy, mommy is not perfect. We also make mistakes. And like in the army, we like to say, negative demonstration. So you can look to your children and say, please, this was just to show you what you shouldn't be doing. Actually, you should be doing this other thing. Great.
Yes.
One more question. So I've heard someone said to me that children is already very stressed out in schools, especially in Singapore nowadays. shouldn't we let them have a few more fun years growing up than to rush into teaching them financial money skills? Would they be too stressed out? What do you think?
Okay, now from what I see is a lot of people, when you talk about financial management, the first thing they talk about is it's so boring. It is always about dollars and cents. But I do not agree. Financial management doesn't have to be something that is you sit down, you take up the textbook and you start to teach them. It can be something that we do in our day-to-day. It can be something like, oh, let's go to the food court. All right. So you have chicken rice, you have all this. Okay, what are your choices? Or it can also be a case of on the weekends when we go out for dinner with the grandparents. Shall we go for the food court? Shall we go for Hai Di Lao or maybe other options as well? These are the moments where we explain to them the choices and the consequences. All right. So these are where they will also learn that, okay, for certain actions, okay, for certain choices, they are more towards the wants rather than the needs. And then, of course, when you go to the supermarket, you ask them, all right, you have all these choices of ice cream. Do you want Haagen-Dazs? Do you want Walls ice cream or whatever? These are also choices for them. And we can make it fun by explaining to them what they can, what are the savings that they have. And sometimes you can also tell them, hey, you know what? We save out this $5 or so. Maybe I can give you a $1 to get something that you like, or for your savings as well. Yeah. So there are a lot of moments for them to learn as well.
So actually, maybe if I were to think of the question the other way, it's not stressful for the children, but actually stressful for the parent, because the parent
Yes.
have to actually come up with a curriculum or syllabus, at various times throughout the day to remember to teach the children. So maybe actually the parents are actually the one feeling stressed. Anyway, let's thank you for your insights. I'm sure you have many more insights to share with our participants this evening as we transition to Slido and take a look at what are some of the questions that participants have put in so that we can take them one by one. Oh, wow. Okay. So I see a tally of about 24 questions. Yeah.
Oh,
So we'll try our best to answer the questions, as many as possible. And then Vicky will also share with you what are some of the other resources that IFL has. So let's get started. The first question: as school move towards digital payments, and given young kids are visual learners, how do we help them practically on saving, budgeting, and spending? Vicky, I think you touched on that a little bit, and I understand you have some young kids in school, right? Maybe you want to take this question?
Okay, sure. So digital payments, honestly speaking, right, is the way to move forward, especially when we as they grow older, when we talk about other platforms. So it is good for them to, to start working, to start to learn about all these digital payments when they were still young. Now, I do agree that young children are visual learners. So what we can do for such young children is, if you are giving them allowances, instead of giving everything in the digital payments, you might want to split it out. So let's say you are giving them $2.50, whereby you're expecting them to save up 50 cents. So what you can do is that 50 cents can be given to them in coins every day. So that is for them to learn savings before they spend. Then after that, of course, every day they go to the schools, right? They spend on the money. On a weekly basis, what we can do is we can actually show them in the apps itself what they have spent on. To me, it is also a teaching moment when we talk about how they spend the recess, what are the food that they eat. And then, of course, they will share with me, oh, I like this, I like that. And then we can actually explain to them what is the needs and the wants in the process. And whatever savings that they have, if they did not finish spending all the money, the balances will actually be saved up. At the end of the month, they will be transferred to their saving accounts. So when the money is being transferred over, I will actually show them on my internet banking the amount of money that they have saved, and during their day-to-day the allowances, right? And that has been transferred over their savings. At the same time, I will also show them the interest that they have earned. So although they do not have the physical cash on hand, but the numbers on the apps, on the internet banking actually shows them all their savings and their spending as well. So it is a good way for them as well to learn how to do the recording. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Now let's move on to the second question. It is difficult for parents because grandparents give extra allowance, so the children don't need to save to buy what they want. How can we work around this? Wow, this is maybe a parenting question, but actually I also can understand the challenges. I mean, some parents can be very strict with their children when they are growing up about various things, not just about money. But somehow when they become grandparents, they become a lot more relaxed about their grandchildren as opposed to their own children. So I can also understand. I suppose the first thing I would do is to talk to my parents and have them understand the philosophy and the motivation of what I'm trying to do with my children, and to sell them this philosophy and hopefully get them on board so that they understand what I'm doing, and will agree with me and will chime in with me instead of going in the opposite direction. But of course, talking is easy. Sometimes they may not agree. I don't know what is your experience with your parents, Vicky?
Honestly speaking, when you talk to the grandparents, right, they will not see any, some of them might not see any issues because they see it as a way to pamper the grandchildren, especially if they only see them once a week or once a month, depends on the arrangement. So what I do with my children when they get the so-called extra allowances, I will actually keep the money for them. All right, I will keep the money for them. And then when we reach home, I will actually put it into their piggy bank. Right. So in this piggy bank, right, it's a little bit special because this piggy bank is what I call the gift. So it's for them to use the money to buy gifts back to the grandparents.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, correct. So I'm explaining to them that the grandparents love you. So that's why they're giving you the extra allowances. But do take note, some grandparents are not working. So what we do is we take the money, we save it out, and then maybe on the monthly or maybe on a quarterly basis, right, use the money to treat the grandparents or to buy a gift during those special occasions. So it's to show their love back. Yeah.
I like the idea. You teach the children sharing, charity, and care for others as well, right? Now, talking about bank account and account, the next question is about when's a good time to set a bank account for children. I have a friend who actually would keep the extra monies that grandparents give or angbao monies in their own account. I find that in such a situation, actually you may encourage the kids to have doubts or concerns about whether the parents have actually properly accounted for the money or not. And so maybe setting up a separate bank account, or in your case, a piggy bank, might be a good idea. What do you think? When do you think is a good time?
I actually set up a bank account for them when they were born.
Oh,
well, I got their birth cert. So I see it as a good way for us to
You have to be a guardian, right? Of the account?
Yes. We have to be the guardian as well. So so it'll be in those names. So either my husband or my name with the child. I think it's a good one because for parents, we start to save up for them maybe $10, $50 on a monthly basis. And then when they start to grow older, they can actually take over so-called the ownership and they start to save up as well. I see it as a good way for them to learn about saving and investing because they see the money grow. So when they see the money grow, when they see all the interest going in, right, they feel very proud of themselves. And they actually give them motivations to continue to save up. And I think it also creates a trust between the parents and the children. As what you say, some of the children, they might be having some doubts. Are you keeping track of the money? Is there any commingle of the money with your money or whatsoever? So having a separate bank account actually gives them a full 100% trust that we are giving them back the money and we're helping them to save up as well.
Let me seg you a little bit and talk about investment accounts. So I think unfortunately for investment account, the children needs to be at least 18 years old.
Yes.
And I just want to share a little bit. My wife's father actually would buy shares as a gift for the grandchildren instead of giving them pocket money. But obviously he will keep it in his own investment account. But he creates a spreadsheet. So then he actually shows the grandchildren the name of the share, and whenever the share pays dividend, it keeps track of it in the spreadsheet. He continued to do that year after year. Now that the grandkids are grown up, he actually transfer the share to them and properly account for the money. I suppose whether you open a separate account or not, ultimately accountability and tracking is very important.
Yes.
Right, let's move on. Next question. My children is going to primary school next year. How much allowance should I give? Should I give it on a weekly basis or on a daily basis? So I think there are many different ways that parents manage finances for their children, especially when the children is maybe very young. They may give them what I call specific money. So a boy, a girl, this is $2 or $5. You go to school today to buy lunch. So specifically it's for lunch. And if you need anything else, talk to daddy. Daddy will give you, will buy it for you. But I suppose at some point in time, the kids will grow up, then you may want to give them some money so that they can learn to manage budget, spend some, save some. So if that's the case, how much allowance should be okay? What do you think, Vicky?
Okay, the allowances should be quite subjective, because I noticed that some schools, the food cost, right, is actually quite relatively cheaper than some other schools. So in terms of the allowances, my suggestion is for the parents to go to the canteen, during the orientation.
That's right.
Take a look at the food prices, and then from there you decide, okay, so if they're going to have some economic rise, how much it costs, and then maybe a certain portion add on for the drinks. Now, what I would suggest is, on top of the allowances, right, to give extra maybe 20 cents to 50 cents, that is purely for savings. So I always encourage my boy and my girl to save before they go out. All right. So that actually creates the impression on them that, the habits that before I do any spending, I must save first.
That's a great idea.
That's what they do. Yeah.
That's a great idea. I share with you another thing, which is something I heard from another friend. This extra. So her daughter is in primary 2, maybe primary 3, and she gives her specific monies to go to school every day to buy lunch. But on top of that, she has a $5 bill put inside her handbag. I mean, inside her like money pouch. And she tells the daughter, you cannot spend this. This is like emergency money. Just in case, for whatever reason, you lost the money or whatever, this $5 is actually for emergency purposes. And I thought that was quite a good idea, because it also encourages the children to have some kind of deferred gratification, not to touch that money because it's really an emergency money, and also encourage them to think about the need for having emergency money in case something happens. Great. Let's move on to the next question. Okay, so this one up your alley. What are some of the basic concepts or skills that children should know or learn when they are in primary or secondary school? I think you spent some time to cover that earlier, but in case the participants came in late this evening, then maybe you want to just rehash some of the points.
All right. So for the primary schools themselves, right, my suggestion is that they are mature enough to learn about sacrifices. So delayed gratifications, saving before spending, and budgeting for those in primary schools as well. So these are some of the important but not so difficult to understand concepts. Now, when it comes to those who are in secondary school, we will suggest that they can learn about how to be a smart consumer, how to do research and comparison in order to get the most value for their spending. The different types of payment methods, whether is it on credit cards, ATM, or those the GrabPay, etc., on those new platforms. So get them to understand the payment method so that they are comfortable with it. Secondary schools are also at the age whereby they can start to learn about investing and insurance. So these are some of the key financial concepts that I think primary and secondary school students should have known by the time they reach the end, by the time they are 16 years old.
Great. Next question talks about deferred gratification that we've spoken about so many times. Right? My son finds it difficult to postpone enjoyment. When he sees something he likes, he immediately wants it. How should I help him learn? I suppose the ability to defer enjoyment varies from people to people, whether young or old. I have friends who are adults and have this problem as well. I suppose some of us do have more patience compared to others. I'm reminded of this marshmallow experiment, which I think a lot of people have heard about or read about. And if not, I encourage you to Google it on the web. There seems to be a correlation between success later in life and the ability to defer when you are at the younger age. For me, I think I would be quite academic about it. I would explain to my son in terms of, what are the things that he could buy, or what are the things that he could pay for if he were to defer that gratification now. So save small, accumulate, and then buy something nice later on. Or the other way is to encourage the child to not rush into a decision, right? To really stop and to give that decision a second thought, another pass, and say, do I really need it? And hopefully that 10 seconds rule of delaying that decision may encourage some patience in the child. But I do think that some kids will be quite hard to teach. Your kids are still relatively young, Vicky. How do you address that?
I guess to my son, especially my son, he finds me quite a shopaholic at times. So, but the thing is, I do not shop at the physical shops. So what I do is I will actually sometimes, if he likes certain things, I will tell him, you know what, mommy can find this on the e-commerce platform. And then I will Google and show him and say, okay, if you're interested, you see, the prices is a bit more cheaper. So what about this? Let's go back. If you're still interested, I will buy it online. Of course, he will pay me back at the end. All right. So he will pay me back. I will buy online, but he has to wait for that. So I guess after a few occasions, right, he gets to realize that, hey, you know what? I like this. I like certain things, but I can actually do research and get it at a cheaper price, but I need to wait for that. So Great. Yeah, so along the way, when I show him on my apps, right, those e-commerce platforms, I will show him and explain to him, why do you think this is a need? Why do you think you want it now? So those are the times when we do all the research, right? He will start to rationalize and think and try to convince me and himself why he needs it now. And plus all the waiting for the delivery, right? At the end of the day, after a few occasions, I realized that he stopped asking me for all those things as well.
I suppose these are some of the tips of being a wise shopper, wise consumer, right? Stop and think, compare prices, do your research. Evermore, I think for children, we should start to inculcate this habit so that it becomes a natural instinct when they become older. Okay. Next one. So we talked a little bit about it, the angbao money. So should we keep children's angbao money or let them be in charge themselves? I'm afraid that they would overspend. How lucky to ask this question, because when I was growing up as a kid, all our angbao money goes back to my mom, because my mom would tell me that, actually the money is not for you, the money is for the family. We have to give other children angbao. But I suppose, I think it's a legitimate question. We talked about accountability. So if you keep the children's angbao money, you have to be accountable to tell them that you have put the money into the bank. I think Vicky, you also mentioned some aspects of that earlier. And if they let them take charge of it, then I suppose is to make sure that they learn how to manage the money, right? So this evening we're all talking about that. If you don't try, I guess they will never learn. What would you say to that, Vicky?
For the children's angbao money, right? If finances permit, I would say we should. I won't say let them in charge of it 100%, but we can actually help them to save out, say probably 70% of it, and then the other 30%, I will actually suggest that you might want to let them take ownership, for them to be in charge of it. So of the 30%, they can save out 20% for their day-to-day savings, into their piggy bank. The other 10%, I will say, let them spend a portion of it. So probably that 10% of it on certain small little treats for themselves. So in a way, we are not restricting them in terms of the spending, but we are also guiding them in terms of how to save out, how to, manage their spending. And in this case, I guess the children will not feel of any doubts as well. That, what is happening to my angbao money, what are you doing with that, etc. But of course, finance permit, because I do know of some families whereby they will keep the money All right, as what you say, I know during our era where the parents will keep the money because they have to give angbao to the other children as well. Yeah.
Okay, great. The next question also you touch upon some of it, which is about online scams. So with so many online scams nowadays, I try very hard to restrict the time they spend on the internet to prevent them from getting into trouble. Any advice? Personally, I don't like the restrictive approach, because the less the children have to actually try on their own, the more the curiosity that there is. I prefer the approach of more sort of open, honest discussion for the children to also share with me what they are doing. But at the same time, some kind of a control over the amount of time. That one is obviously important because you don't want them to be spending all their time on the internet, scam or no scam. They're going to have very little time for work, and it's not good for them. So that would be the approach I personally would prefer. I don't know about you, Vicky. What would you do with your children?
Actually, I do agree with you that if you try to, avoid the topic itself, the children might not learn. So being very open about it, going through the scams and then explaining to them, building out their trust in you so that they can share with you if they fall into any scam. So open discussions will be more important than restriction.
Yeah, I think earlier you also mentioned that children can get traumatized after a scam. Whether they lost money or not, whilst it's important, I think the emotional, psychological impact is probably quite important. So I think all the more the parent should have that frank conversation with the children, so that they don't think that it is largely their fault that they were scammed. Of course, there are some precautions that they can take. Next one is about NS. Okay, so how can I introduce concept of investing to grow savings to my son who's about to go to NS? So if I recall, the local banks have schemes like save as you serve, or some catchy jingle like that. But basically, the idea here is to incentivize NS men who deposit their pay into the bank account with a higher interest rate. And I think the whole concept of investing really at its core, it's about this idea of what we call compound interest, right? Compound interest. Interest grow on interest. If you save the money in your bank account, the money will gain interest. The interest will gain interest the following year. So I guess for me, I would say, get them to keep their money in their account and appreciate the fact that interest grows, and interest can grow on interest. And maybe I would incentivize them with some additional bonus interest if they were to not spend all their money or to keep their savings for a longer period of time. So I think this idea of compound interest is quite key before we even go and talk about stocks and securities and things like that. You have a boy. Maybe the boy is still some years to go before NS. But in the meantime, whilst the boy is growing up, what would your approach be in terms of teaching him about investing?
We have started on the topic of investing, but it's very broad in the sense that when I buy shares or when I do my research or my investing, I actually share with him why I do certain things. So I say, okay, at this junction, with all the economic things in everything, we are looking at certain industry. I explain to him, and then we look at it, and then if there's any particular industry that I finally bought into the shares of the company, I will actually tell him, okay, if you go to your YouTube, if you see any news on all those, if you happen to see an advertisement, let me know. Okay, we can discuss about it, how it will help in the share price, etc. And then, of course, if I receive any dividends, I will show him as well. And of course, all those on top of those investings, right, we also talk about the emergency fund. So for the emergency funds, right, as what you mentioned, we talk about compounding interest. And that is where every month he will get to see his bank statement, to see all the interest that is coming in. So that is to excite him, motivate him as well. So I'm not sure about for the NS, but I thought that is a good concept about invest or save as you, as you go through the NS and all that. And that should be something that they probably will be quite interested in as well. Yeah.
Next question is quite interesting. If we do what you recommended, Vicky, and show them how to put their money into containers, that but the containers cannot be locked. Wouldn't the sibling take each other's money? You have 2 kids, so what do you think? Would your son take your daughter's money, or the other way around, the daughter take your son?
My son will try to persuade my girl to give him the money.
Because your girl is a better saver.
No, my son is someone who save a lot. He is to the extent of a little bit stingy with his money. Right, I'll be a bit careful. I won't say stingy, a bit careful. So he will try to persuade his sister to do certain things, to help her to do certain things. In return, she will pay him.
Wow.
Yeah, correct. But anyway, back to this on the 3 containers, right? What I do is I actually get those with a mini lock. So they can actually lock it, but it's the same keys that they have. So I keep all the keys. And they have to get the key from me before they can open the container.
Okay.
So if they are worried about siblings taking each other's money, then a small little lock probably will help.
Yeah, I suppose we don't want to leave it to chance as well, not to tempt the children and have this uneasy doubt over did they or did they not. Good idea. Okay. Next question. I give in to my children to buy toys whenever we go shopping because I don't want to disappoint them. Will this become a bad habit, and how should I say no to them? I think it's important to get the children to see what they are asking for, and to also do the mental math of the cost and the consequences of what they're asking for. Personally, for me, if it was a slightly more expensive item, I would explain to my children to say that, okay, this costs $50. You want this? Okay. Do you know how much $50 translate to in terms of how many lunches that you will miss, or how many days of pocket money you would not get? Or if they are doing some kind of chores, part-time work where they earn some small stipend, how many hours you have to work in order to get to $50 to buy this. So get them to think about it in these terms, and then to analyze, and then to say that, okay, do I still want to buy it? I think that's quite important, rather than simply buying it because they want it. That's what I would do. What would you do, Vicky?
I probably would do something similar, as in explain to him how much the money can be translated to. So for my girl, she likes lollipops. So sometimes we buy the lollipop. So when she wanted to buy toys, we will explain, how many lollipops that you'll be looking at, all right, and what you can buy with the money saved and etc. One thing that I do agree that, if you keep buying toys, that is what I realized. It becomes a very bad habit. They will go into the toy shop. They will say, I must come up with a toy, even though they might not be interested in the toy. So sometimes you say, okay, you can only buy $10 or less than $10. And even though there's nothing that catch their eyes, they will still insist to get something. So it's not something I would say, no, I will propose to the parents not to give it, to explain. And maybe you might want a prep talk before you go for the shopping. Like, okay, today we are going to grocery shopping. I'm going to get this and that. All right. So this is for our lunch, our whatever, but we are not going to come back with any toys. So it kind of help to prepare them emotionally before they reach the shop. And they know they are not going to buy anything other than what mommy has said. So of course, mommy has to stick to her, shopping list and not start to buy all kind of little things that, that is not in the shopping list. So it's also a teaching moment as well, I guess, that, you prepare the list, you stick to the list.
You are absolutely right. I mean, at IFL, we also tell a lot of our participants the basics of being a wise consumer is to have a budget, have a shopping list, so that you would shop within your budget. Because if you go out without a list or without some kind of expectation, that it's so easy to get persuaded to just buy whatever you like, and then it becomes hard to then manage the budget after that. Great. Next question is a little bit, I guess, for older, maybe not. It says, okay, should I buy insurance for my children now when they are so young? So this is not about MoneySense for the children. This is just a general questions about insurance. I think we can take that question. I suppose for young families, the cost of insuring their children when they are younger is lower. So it does make sense that that you keep your children on an insurance plan early on, so that the premiums are low. And when the children grow up and become of age, they become an adult, you can actually transfer the ownership of the plan to the children, and then they can take on from there to continue to pay the premium. For health insurance, it's all the more important, whether young or not, for the children to be covered. In fact, all of us have MediShield Life, right?
Yes.
So here we are talking about maybe the additional private insurance. What do you do with your children, Vicky, in terms of insurance coverage?
I think before we talk about insurance coverage for the children, we must first of all look at the budget, because insurance is a long-term commitment. So if the budget doesn't allow you to get any insurance, then I think you might want to hold back. But for those families with a slightly bigger budget where they can afford to buy the insurance, my suggestion is they might want to consider insurance for the children. So because some of the insurance, they came with the payer protection. So should anything happens to the payer, the premiums will be paid by the insurance company. So the children still get the insurance protection, even though the payer, maybe the parents are no longer around or whatever, but the insurance company will still continue to pay off the insurance premium, which I think is important. I guess because it came from my experience with my two friends. So unfortunately, both friends, their daughters, the two daughters, right, were down with cancer. So fortunately, they actually recovered. But it also showed the importance of the insurance in this case for them. So yeah, I would suggest yes, if they have the budget, but if not, then no.
Yeah, at IFL, we always encourage parents, or participants, not to spend beyond 10% of their budget on insurance premiums, right? So in this case, if you include your children, I suppose you should also include that in your own budget. Next question, this one will be for older children. I want to apply for a supplementary credit card for my teenage children. So I'm the main card holder, but my children also get a credit card to spend, so that they learn how to manage credit. Is it a good idea? Personally, right, Vicky, for me, I think if the children were going to school overseas, right, then maybe they may need a credit card because they do have expenses to pay for, and daddy, mommy is not around. Maybe there is a physical need for the card, and they also learn how to manage their credit on the card. But if they are in Singapore, I'm not so sure I see the relevance of having a supplementary card just so that they can learn to manage credit. I think we can do with budgeting, getting the children to understand budgeting, and then debit cards in Singapore works quite well as well. That's my opinion. What do you think, Vicky?
I do agree a debit card might be a better idea to help them in terms of learning how to manage their budget. If there is really a need for a supplementary credit card, as you mentioned, maybe they are going overseas, maybe they are on an overseas trip or whatsoever, then we might want to limit the credit. So instead of like say 10,000 or whatsoever, we can actually limit it to say $200-300
for the sub card.
Yeah, correct. So that will help them to manage the credit, but not so much that they might go bankrupt. They couldn't pay back the parents. Yeah.
Just for the benefit of our participants, unlike some other countries, like maybe the US, where one needs to develop a credit score check record, I think in Singapore there is no need for doing that. So anyone with the income criteria can apply for a credit card. So there's no need to sort of get them to build up their credit record. Next question, this one for you, Vicky. How do you teach your children to be wise shoppers?
I guess the first thing they need to learn is to prioritize needs and wants. So whenever they go shopping, whenever they want to buy things, I will ask them, why do you need it? Is it something that you can, hold back the purchasers? Is this the best price that you can find? Have you found a second or a third source that you can get the same thing, but at a different prices? So if they can answer me, then yes, I might consider buying for them. But at the end of the day, they need to prove to me that they have done their research. So research on what is the best price that they have, whether this is a needs or the wants, is it something that they can afford as well? Yeah.
Good. Right. Next question is interesting. I recently heard earn, save, spend, donate. So the 4 basic attributes of money management. I really like the idea of children learning about charity. And we talk a little bit about that, right? Your the grandparents' money, buying gifts for the grandparents. Any suggestion how? So I suppose that is one way to do that. I have an interesting anecdote to share on this one. I used to have a ex-colleague in a social service organization that I worked in. They would take what they call charity holidays sometimes. So they'll go to countries where it's not as developed as Singapore. And one of the activities that they do on this holiday is actually a charity activity. So maybe they go to the village, help the children, or help the villagers with certain things. And that's her way of teaching charitable giving to the children. I really like it because nothing beats actually doing or experiencing it yourself. But to be fair, I think in the school system nowadays, it's very common. Maybe COVID has changed a bit of that, but it's very common for end of school activity whereby there is something that the school would encourage the children to do, whether it's to have a charity fundraising card, or actually an activity at an old folks' home. I suppose this would also encourage the charitable giving habit amongst the school children. What do you see for your children in their schools?
During Chinese New Year, right, they will have this donation card.
The school?
For my boys' school.
Okay.
So they will be asked to donate out of their angbao money. So that is to cultivate in them the allowances that they receive. They will have to, they'll be taught to give a portion back to the society. So that is what they do for the donation itself. And then, of course, on top of that, they do, besides monetary donations, right, they also do those non-monetary. So things like day-to-day needs like rice, Milo, all those daily needs, we will also donate. So what they will suggest is for the children to use their pocket money to go to the shopping, to the supermarket, and they will buy all the things and then we'll bring it to the school. So that is how they do a donation as well. So it's 2 ways, twice a year.
Wow, great. So the schools also doing their part to impart charitable habits with the children. But I guess, as we said earlier, children learn from observing. So as parents, we should also be charitable in our ways, especially towards other people, so that they also will see that these are traits that they should emulate.
Okay, can I just add on? So sorry
Go
about
ahead.
that.
Go ahead.
Okay, so before COVID, we used to have this we have this neighborhood WhatsApp group. So what we do is we will actually organize all these charity events, whereby the parents will bring along the children to one of us will look for a charity organization. So it can be the old folks home and etc. So we will arrange for the event, and then we will bring the children down. We will donate some some funds, some donations to get some gifts for maybe like the old folks and all that. And we'll bring the kids down. So we will prepare games, performance, etc. So this is a very ad hoc kind of like charity run that is done within the parents group. So I thought that is actually quite a very interesting way that we used to do. So hopefully, post-COVID, we can also start to do something similar as well. But I guess it's something that, some of the parents, they can come together and they can do it. It's not so expensive, but it's something that the children learn as well, because they have to organize as well.
Yeah, great. Thanks for sharing.
Mm.
Wow, so quickly we are approaching the end of the hour. We only have time for one last question. And the last question I'll take would be the number 3, which is, do you think it's a good idea that younger children should inherit pre-loved stuff from their older siblings? Will they feel less loved as a result? Personally, I think that the children should get the right message to begin with, whether they will feel less love or not. That's of course important to consider, but the messaging is quite important. And like we donate things to Salvation Army or to other charities for other less privileged people, the concept is always don't donate things that you won't use yourself, that is too worn out or not edible or past expiry and things like that. So I suppose the important thing is that if the older children is going to pass on their things to the younger siblings, then it's important to also encourage the older children to take good care of their things, so that by the time they pass it on to the younger siblings, it is not like tattered and torn. It reminds me of this interesting anecdote my wife has. Growing up, she would inherit, she's only a year younger than the brother, would inherit the textbooks from the brother. And she always hates it, telling me as we are adults now, that the brother would scribble on the textbook, not important things, but all the doodles and cartoons and everything. So I think she's really didn't enjoy it, didn't like it when she was young. Perhaps she should have told her brother or told her parents, and then maybe something could be done. What do you think, Vicky?
Well, I guess I'm the opposite from your wife, because I'm the eldest. So usually I will be the one passing down the textbook to my brother. So if you really ask me, right, I take very good care of my books. So I think my brother do enjoy pre-loved but almost brand new textbook. It's not as though I do not study, but I tend to take a better care of it. Maybe because ladies tends to be much better care, care for their things. But when it comes to my children, right, honestly speaking, I'm actually getting pre-loved stuff even for my eldest boy, especially when it comes to like textbook, assessment books, for school related, even school uniform. I don't see it as something that is less love. I see it as something that is being very environmental friendly. So I explained to them that this is pre-love. I got it from someone else, which is totally still as brand new, like uniform and all that. And we should take good care of it. And then we can move, pass it on to another students who do not mind getting all this pre-love stuff. And I do actually show him, let's give away some of your uniforms or the textbook that we are not using for those other students that they might need it. So we have this very interesting group whereby, not for the school itself, we have this interesting recycle groups whereby we will upload all these informations about books, uniforms, or any other materials that we do not need it, but it is still as good as new and we can pass it on. Yeah. So I guess in this way, the children, they might feel that they are less loved because they are getting all the pre-love. But the kind of message, as you mentioned, why is it a pre-love? It's not because the parents cannot afford, but rather is there a need? Okay, it's a need and wants issue. Do we need to get a new one for you as well? So I do encourage them to. So that's why for my eldest child, I said, to be fair, we will all get pre-love as much as we can. And he's quite chill with it. Although sometimes he will complain, Mommy, there's some drawings inside there. So I said, okay, then you just explain this is from another child who passed it on to you. So he gets it because his sister will also use the same sets of textbook. Both are the same. So it's not as though they are less loved, but I love them equally.
All right, thank you, Vicky. I guess we've come to the last question, and pass the time back to you. Thank you for having me on the show.
Thank you, Sui-Chu, so much for your time. Now, let me just move back to our session. All right. Now, for IFL, we have actually curated activity kits that is for the parents to play with the children. So you might want to scan this QR code to download the activity kits that you can play with them. Especially now it's the holiday, so it's a good time for you to play with them. All right. So for IFL, we do conduct some public sessions. So you might want to scan a QR code, or you can also visit us at ifl.org.sg to look at some of the public sessions. And you can actually sign up for those that you're interested in as well. Now, if you have any more questions, you can actually email us at ifl.spi.edu.sg, or you can also go to finlearn.sg, which is a community for like-minded individuals, whereby we will all be around to answer some of your queries or your concerns when it comes to financial education program, okay, or your financial journey. So you can talk about anything under the sky, be it retirements or for money sense for your child, etc. Now, if you like to follow us, or if you like to contact us, you can look at the following. So the website, or even to the finlearn.sg, or if you're interested in the Facebook or Instagram or even Telegram, you can also reach out to us in this for the following website. All right, so do take note, we will have some 2 podcasts regarding this MoneySense for children coming on. You can actually stay tuned to it. All right, and then of course we would like to have some of the feedback in terms of how we can improve on the subsequent EMA sections.